here with Radio Sri Lanka. It's 11:31 and well, up next we've got an interview. Welcome dear listeners to the program, and you can listen to some great music in between as well. It's a live interview, and we have with us in our studios this morning a great personality, medical doctor specialized in psychotherapy and author, Dr. Ruwan M. Jayatunge. A very good morning to you and a very warm welcome to the program, Doctor.
Thank you.
Dr. Ruwan M. Jayatunge received his MD from Vinnytsia National Medical University in Ukraine in 1993, and he worked as a medical officer of mental health at the Ministry of Health in Sri Lanka. He was in the Sri Lanka Army treating combatants with PTSD, and he became one of the pioneers to study the psychosocial effects of PTSD in Sri Lanka. Dr. Ruwan has written a number of books and published several research articles on PTSD, that is post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and he studied child psychology at Barnsley College in Great Britain and psychosocial rehabilitation at Humber College in Canada, and he underwent a residential training in EMDR in Philadelphia under the renowned psychologist Dr. Susan Rogers, and he received high honors diploma in SSW from Seneca College and completed his degree in psychology at York University, Canada. And currently he is doing his PhD in psychotherapy at Sigmund Freud University, Vienna. And Dr. Ruwan M. Jayatunge is a guest lecturer, and he has delivered several lectures on war, trauma and PTSD in University, Kansas, University, Canada, and VA Medical Center, Pennsylvania, Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and he's a member of the International Scientific Committee of the Post-Traumatic Embedment Disorder, or PTED, panel representing Canada. A very warm welcome once again, Doctor, and to start things off, could you tell us more about yourself? We understand that you started your career at SLBC at a very young age, and we would love to hear from you more on that, as well as other details such as where you grew up, your childhood, your education, etc.
Oh, it's a very pleasant memories I have. That's way back in 1985. After finishing my advanced level, because I studied at Nalanda College, so after finishing my advanced level, I had a sort of free period, and during that time I had the opportunity of working as a guest producer for the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation English service under Mr. Alec Robertson. Actually, I was invited by Mr. Alec Robertson, and that time the chairman was Mr. Livi Vijayaman. And I remember I was interviewed by Mr. Veeraman. He was the DG. So those are very nice memories. And I was a schoolboy, practically just out from the school, just finished my advanced level. So that time I met huge personalities. I still recall some of the people like Richard D'Souza, Ravi John, Rajan Vairavanathan, Niranjan Abhisundara, and a lot of people, Arun Dias Bandaranayake. Actually, for me, they were like great personalities and great broadcasters, and Jimmy Barusha, of course.
Niranjan Abhisundara is...
that's what I heard that he's still working.
Yeah,
and,
he comes on Mondays as well as on Sundays.
Because I came after so many years to Sri Lanka, because I would like to meet him. I hope he could remember me. So I was doing this part-time job, and it was, for me, it was very educational, and I got a lot of experiences. And we had a training program that was conducted by Stuart Wavell from the BBC. So there were about 30 people from the English service and the Sinhala service. So I was the only schoolboy for that training program, and Mr. Stuart Wavell and Mr. H.M. Gunasekara, they conducted this training program. Later it really helped me how to do a presentation, how to get the audience, how to get their attention, and how to train your voice. So these things were really good training for me in the years to come.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for that interesting introduction. And we also know that at one time you worked for the Sri Lanka Army treating combatants with PTSD, that's post-traumatic stress disorder. So we would like to know more on this, Doctor, and we would also like to you to take us through the practical experiences during that time as well, and also tell us what is psychotherapy and the importance of that as well, Doctor.
Sure. In 2002, I joined the Sri Lanka Army, the medical corps, and I worked under the renowned psychiatrist Dr. Neil Fernando. And I was able to treat a lot of combatants with battle trauma. And during that time, the doctors and they did not recognize the mental wounds. For them, the most important thing was the physical wounds. So we identified a lot of combatants with battle trauma, not physically, but the mentally traumatized combatants. So what you call the Vietnam syndrome. So that time, some of the medical experts, they didn't believe that PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is emerging in Sri Lanka. They considered this as an American illness. But we did a lot of research work. We did a lot of profound studies. I myself and Dr. Neil Fernando, and we published a research paper later on. And we clinically interviewed 823 combatants. And we found 56 combatants with full-blown symptoms of PTSD. They have various symptoms like nightmares, flashbacks, reliving the traumatic combat memories, and some were focused to negative stress coping methods such as alcohol consumption, domestic violence, child abuse, social violence, etc. So we tried to treat these people with medication as well as psychotherapy. So your second question, what is psychotherapy? Psychotherapy is very important because even though we treat the person with medications, chemically based, but also we have to change his thinking pattern, the cognition. Because, for example, depression can be caused by the change of the brain chemistry. Certain brain chemistry that is being changed, so the person can experience depressive symptoms. So with the medication, you can recorrect that, but there's a certain cognition is associated with depression symptoms. The person is always having these depressive symptoms, and his thinking pattern, his cognition is changed. So we have to shift this negative thinking pattern into positive thinking pattern. So where the psychotherapy is important. So I would like to echo some of the words of the great medical doctor who lived in the Middle Ages, Avicenna. He said, first use words for your patient. Secondly, use the medication. The third, you use the surgical blade for your patient. So the words are very important. And Benjamin Disraeli once said, we rule people through words. Even Sigmund Freud highlighted the importance of words in psychoanalysis. So with words, you can treat people, you can heal people. In the meantime, you can destroy people. So words are very important. So whereas psychotherapy today, in Sri Lanka, psychotherapy is not very much developed. It's still in the very, very lower stage. But in the United States, in Canada, in other Western countries, psychotherapy is very much developed, and they have done a lot of research, and they have found very, very effective psychotherapeutic methods, especially to treat PTSD and especially to treat depression and other psychiatric ailments.
Right, Doctor. So, listeners, we are in conversation with Dr. Ruwan M. Jayatunge, medical doctor specialized in psychotherapy and author. And we have much more to talk about, so stay tuned in. And right now it's going to be a short musical break. And let's listen to this beautiful number by the Eagles, Hotel California. In fact, that song was selected by Dr. Ruwan Jayatunge, and I'm sure he has a lot to tell us about the song, what the song is about, and also he told me that he communicated with one of the Eagles members, that is Don Felder. So Don Felder, Don Henley and Don Frey are the three Eagles members. So Doctor, tell the listeners more about the song, and I'm sure they will love to hear about the song and about the Eagles. Don Henley, your communication with him.
Yeah, actually this song, Hotel California, really inspired us as school children. I remember probably in 1980, where I was in grade 8, and we used to listen to this song and try to sing this song with much difficulty. And so in 2017, I had the opportunity of going to an Eagles live show. So that time Glenn Fry, he wasn't there. He had dead and gone, but his son Deacon Fry played on his behalf. So I saw the band and I listened to their live music, and it was a very, very wonderful opportunity for me. So later on, I was communicating with Don Felder, who was the main architect who wrote this song, Hotel California. He wrote this greatest song ever with the help of Don Henley and Glenn Fry. So, but later he left the group. They had some disputes. But Don Felder is one of the greatest guitarists, and always he plays with the double neck guitar, and this is his signature song. So I was so inspired by that, and recently Don sent me a small he sent me an email saying, "Greetings, Ruwan, from Don Felder," and I have framed that. That's a very nice souvenir for lifetime. So after seeing Eagles, I started researching on this inimitable song, Hotel California. Actually, there are different versions. According to Don Henley, the drummer, he says it's about the lifestyle in California, and also some people say it's about the hyper-consumerism in the Western world. So the song illustrates about the hyper-consumerism, and there are different versions. Some people say that it's about cocaine addiction, and the last line goes that you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. It's like addiction. Once you are hooked in, that there is no escape. So
your blog actually explains a lot about the song. It says Hotel California is a mental hospital, according to, and also Hotel California is about spiritualism and occultism in 1960, and much more definitions are given here in your blog. So I was just going through it, and very interesting indeed. It says, as the music critics view, this song is an allegory about hedonism and self-destruction. Hotel California is a first-person narrator who is driving in the desert. Then he sees a sparkling light and decides to go there and have a night rest. On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, warm smell of colitas rising up through the air, up ahead in the distance. So it goes like that. So you've actually given for each and every song verse, you have given an explanation here. Very interesting indeed.
Yeah, the verse that you recited, it talks about the cravings, like the person is attracted to the light like a moth into the light, and here he goes to his unknown destiny. So this explains about the addiction, and also certain cults, like in late 1960s, Charles Manson, the serial killer, he formed his family and committed a lot of horrific crimes. So the Hotel California, this mystical institution, represent that Charles Manson's these insane institution. And also probably you must have seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So that's also another mental hospital. Like those days in the 60s, they used to do lobotomy for the psychiatric patients and converting them into like a zombies. So that's sort of unethical practice. So Hotel California has vivid interpretations, and also some say it's about the Vietnam War, because war welcomes young soldiers. They say welcome to the Hotel California. In fact, some of the POWs, American POWs, they used to name their prison like Hilton Hotel and Hotel California. So while they were living in their deplorable situation in these bamboo cells.
Yeah. So the listeners can, I'm sure, go through this if they... It's very informative, and several actually interpretations are given about the song. So how do they, if they want to...
No, it's published on my blog, Transylvania. If you,
Transylvania, okay.
If you Google that, like write Hotel California, what the song is about, Dr. Ruwan Jayatunge, Transylvania, you will get that article.
Yeah.
And there are a number of articles, mental health and...
Right. So moving on with more questions. Doctor, now we know that you're on a short vacation here in Sri Lanka. So could you tell us about your work in Canada?
2009, I went to Canada, and I went to York University to further my studies. I studied psychology, and also I did the SPID program in Kansas, Washburn University. So I was studying basically psychology, psychotherapy, and psychosocial rehabilitation. And I had the opportunity of working with people with severe drug addiction. Here we are talking about the hardcore drug addicts, like people who were drawn into very, very serious substances and years of drug addiction, like 10 years, 20 years. So I had the opportunity to treat them with psychotherapy.
That's
and I used
Canada.
In Canada, and I used meditation. And in fact, 2 years ago, I wrote a book on clinical meditation, highlighting the importance of meditation. So it's not a cultural practice, it's not the religion based. It's like the mental exercise, how the simple breath meditation, what you call the Anapanasati meditation, helps people, because it gives a lot of oxygen to your system, because your brain craves oxygen, and also reduces the stress hormones, reduces depression, anxiety. Those are the triggers for people to use drugs. So I would like to say that with our team, we treated people with long-term drug addiction, and we got positive results, very, very positive results. Some of the people, they stopped abusing these substances, and they were able to get back into their healthy lifestyle. So I believe in recovery. I believe in psychosocial rehabilitation. So even in PTSD, the thing is, I would like to mention something which I missed last time when you asked about post-traumatic stress disorder. So earlier they thought PTSD was an American illness, which is not, because according to the Western literature, the first PTSD patients were reported in 1666, soon after the Great Fire of London. These are the Western medical literature says. But when I dig into our Sri Lankan history, I found that some of the writing of the Portuguese author, Queiroz, he writes about the mental health condition of King Sitavaka Rajasinghe, the Rajasinghe the first. So he was a warrior. He came to the battlefield at the age of 16, and he witnessed horrendous battle experiences. Later on, he developed PTSD-like symptoms. He had hostility, deep suspicion, and uncontrollable anger, and he started executing, he started killing his generals out of mere suspicion. And the rumor says that he killed his own father. So could be, this is a very, very significant symptom of PTSD, emotional anesthesia or emotional numbness. So Queiroz elegantly writes about Setabka Rajasinghe. This is a description of a PTSD patient, and I wrote that. I published this research paper. Actually, the American psychologists, they were so amused, they were taken aback, because this is in 1500s, way before then the Great Fire of London, and the U.S. Army, they have FSO office. They are publishing the foreign literature. So they published my article, PTSD, the melody shared by East and West. So that's also on the web, and it's on my Transylvania blog. So in a way, I'm happy that I was able to bring this controversial topic and to disprove some of the myths and say this is not a culture-defined ailment. It's actually, it was there even in the Buddhist literature. If you see the Jataka stories, in fact I wrote one book about this psychological aspects of Buddhist Jataka stories, because the original book was written by one psychiatrist from Sri Lanka. He wrote a psychiatric aspect of Buddhist Jataka stories by Dr. D.V.J. Harishchandra. So I wrote the psychological aspects. So there I mentioned about one case study that was narrated in the Jataka stories. One bhikkhu who had PTSD-like symptoms, called Marana Biruka Bhikshu.
Yes. So, Doctor, my next question is actually going to be on that. So, we know that you had written a number of books such as Clinical Meditation, Anxiety Disorders, Combat Stress, PTSD, Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, Psychological Management of Sexual Trauma Victims, Stress Management between Literature and Psychology, Psychological Aspects of Buddhist Jataka Stories, Buddhism and Psychology, Shell Shock to Palali, and also some Sinhala books, Jivitha Saha Maranaya, Sangramen Pasu, Vaidyavarage Sihisathan, Vishwa Sahitya Patikadak. So many such books, you as well as several research articles on PTSD as well as on many other topics. So talk us through the author, Dr. Ruwan M. Jayatunge.
I had this insatiable desire to write, express myself. Even in way back in 1979, I was in grade 7. I started writing a novel, and some of my colleagues, my students, they laughed at me, like they were asking, "What do you? You're wasting your time. Your free time. You're writing. You're endless writing." Is actually I couldn't publish it, but I tried to write about some story, some certain novel, but it was that attempt was unsuccessful. So I started writing, and I think in late 1990s I was able to publish my first book. It's about learning difficulties among school children. That's because I studied child psychology at Barnsley College. So one of my inspirational lecturers, Professor Stephen Heath, and here in Sri Lanka, Professor Tilokasundari Karivasam. So they inspired me to do this study, and I was treating a lot of school children with learning disabilities because of the due to medical reasons, due to psychological reasons. So I was able to figure out, due to certain psychological ailments, children show learning difficulties, rather not learning disabilities. And ADHD, sometimes it could be trauma-based, like a child comes from a troubled household, like if he witnesses parental violence and other trauma, child abuse, so he goes into certain ADHD type of behavior. So we have to distinguish whether this is regular, typical ADHD or this is trauma-based behavior, because soon after 2004 Asian tsunami, we saw a large number of children with ADHD symptoms, and those were trauma-based behaviors, and we were able to treat them. So based on that experience, I wrote one Sinhala book called Adhyapana Pratikara that was published by Godage Publishers. So learning difficulties was one of my areas that I started treating these school children, and I'm happy to say that I was able to pioneer that field too.
Yeah, so author of so many books and several research articles as well. So we are in conversation with Dr. Ruwan M. Jayatunge. So let's take a break and we'll be back. In the meantime, let's enjoy this one by Eric Clapton, Wonderful Tonight. Wonderful song indeed from the 1970s there, Eric Clapton with Wonderful Tonight. So, and Dr. shared some information with me about that song as well. And in fact, Doctor had watched a concert of Eric Clapton's 3 years ago in the USA, and some very interesting stories indeed. So why don't you share those experiences that you had at the concert, and also let us know, Doctor, what type of music you like, and also something very interesting Doctor shared with me during the musical break, that is an incident with former announcer, late Richard D'Souza, at the SLBC record room. So I'm sure the listeners would love to hear all that from you. So why don't you share all the interesting information about the concert as well as the incident at the record room with Richard D'Souza.
Okay, Tajri, it was an embarrassing moment with Eric Clapton concert. This was in Madison Square Garden, and I was late. And even though I had the e-ticket, there was some problem because the money didn't go through, or a problem with the credit card. And then I tried to buy the ticket there, and I merely had an altercation with one of the security guards, and it's really discouraged me, and so I missed the concert, and then I had to buy a T-shirt, and the whole time I was waiting near Madison Square Garden. So I missed Eric Clapton. So actually, I can say that we grew up with these music like Bee Gees. I loved Bee Gees since I was a schoolboy, and we loved Barry, Robin, and Morris, even Andy Gibb. So during our days, ABBA, they were very popular, and I liked several songs of ABBA, and we had those days there was a magazine, if you could remember, Sat Mag, and it was a teen magazine or a newspaper, and a lot of musical information was there. There was no YouTube, there was no internet, and we are very far away from the Western culture, and there was no way of getting this information. So things like Sat Mag and Daily News, some of the features that covered these stories, and that's how we used to get update our knowledge. So music, of course, SLBC did a great service, like to our generation. That's how we came to know about Hank Snow, Engelbert, Frank Sinatra, even up to today. I remember Channa Pereira. He was doing a FM program way back in 1985, 86, and I have met Channa several times. I had tea with him. He was a very good broadcaster and a music lover, and he used to play very good music, pop. He helped to popularize pop music in Sri Lanka. So they were the cultural diplomats. So this other incident that occurred in 1986 at the record room at the SLBC, I really loved rock music. I used to listen to Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, and Deep Purple. So I didn't know that Richard D'Souza was there. He was listening to one opera and he was an opera lover. So in fact, I didn't see Richard. And at the record room, there was a person who was in charge. His name was Gunasekar, I remember. Gunasekar, and there was another gentleman named Jayatunge. Those two were there, and Jayatunge is an amazing character. He could recall any record. Like if you say, let's say, Last Train to London, the song, ELO, Electric Light Orchestra, he would say the number. So whenever I go to the record room, I used to ask about the songs, like let's say Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven, then he says the record, the specific number. So he was like like an encyclopedia. So the incident with Richard, and I played this Highway Star, heavy hard rock song very loudly, and I disturbed Richard D'Souza. And Richard was such a nice guy. He was not a nasty guy. Like, I was a very junior guy. He could come and shout at me, but he instead of doing that, he came to me and looked into my eyes, and he left. So in a way, he said that, hey, you guy, you disturbed me, so I'm leaving. And after that, I was so embarrassed, and I couldn't apologize. But what I did was I just switched off the music and went back.
Interesting indeed, Doctor. Thank you so much for sharing all that with us and the listeners. So going back to your article, your books, what was your most recent book, Doctor? And also, I would like to ask you, how long on average do you take to write a book?
Actually, it depends. So, for instance, I wrote one book within 6 weeks. That's JFK, John F. Kennedy, but I wrote it in Sinhala. John F. Kennedy, Jeevithe Saha Maranaya, also published by Godage International Publishers. That after seeing Oliver Stone's JFK movie, and I wanted to share this knowledge with our Sinhala readers who are not getting the vital information about JFK assassination. So I watched a lot of movies, a lot of documentaries about Onassis, Jackie Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy. So after reading about this wonderful family and these people, I wanted to give something to the Sinhala readers. So that's why I wrote that book, and I was so motivated. I had a lot of energy. So within 6 weeks, I finished that book. It's about 160 pages. So I finished that book. But some books, it took years and years. For instance, PTSD, Sri Lankan experience, shell shock to Palali syndrome. Because shell shock is the PTSD version during the World War I. World War II, they had combat fatigue. And Vietnam, they had post-traumatic stress disorder. So our 30-year war created certain syndrome called Palali syndrome. So I named that. So we have to have our specifications. So that book took me more than 6 to 7 years. I remember I started writing it in 2002. I finished probably in 2010 or 11. When I remember some of the chapters I did when I was in Canada. So it took long years for me to write this book.
And Doctor, one more question on that. How do you select names for your characters?
In fact, I wrote 3 short story books in Sinhala. Actually, the characters, because average Sri Lankan authors who write short stories, they select some common themes, like in a village theme, either person comes to the city, faces some financial problems, very, very common characters. But in my short stories, it's like international characters. One story, it's about a young guy living in Malibu, and he was given a task transporting a Lamborghini to San Diego. So it's called Santa Barbara Hiachakea. So that's the story. like it's not very, very uncommon. And another short story I wrote, it's about a Russian lieutenant who fought against the German forces in Stalingrad. So another one, it's about Jonathan Harker. What happened to Jonathan Harker after destroying Dracula? So this short story is the beyond that, like Jonathan Harker ge marane sahatawat ketikata. This is about Jonathan Harker after destroying Dracula. After 7 years, he visits Transylvania and goes to the Dracula castle, and again he encounters certain his fear-related flashbacks, and until his death, it's like a diary. So very uncommon characters.
And we've come to the final few minutes of our program this Wednesday afternoon. And finally, Doctor, is there anything that you haven't talked about that you want to share with our listeners?
Actually, I think I'm so fortunate to work in the SLBC during my short period. I started soon after my A-levels in 1985 August, and I was there until 86, maybe until July. So that period gave me a lot of exposure, working with professionals, working with these great broadcasters. I mean, we haven't realized their inimitable value. And also, I used to travel. There are several countries I couldn't visit: Israel, Egypt, and some of the countries in Africa. Other than that, I was able to travel. I was living in Eastern Europe. I was living in Western Europe, Australia, and Canada, USA. So that exposure gives me that global experience. Gives me something beyond our tiny island. So I always respect, and I always recognize people from different cultures, different ethnicities. I think it's very important, like times like this, and to be wise and give something to the society.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for making time for us and joining us on the program. And we at Radio Sri Lanka wish you all the very best and for the future. And thank you so much once again for being with us on the program.
Thank you, Geetanjali. Thank you very much.
We were in conversation with Dr. Ruwan M. Jayatunge, medical doctor specialized in psychotherapy and author.